What's up, guys? In today's episode, we are going to be installing some coilovers on the Z06, and I'm gonna be going for a little bit of a drive to test things out to see the comparison between the leaf springs and these blown out shocks compared to the new coilover setup. I ended up going with Silver's NeoMax, they're called. Pretty decent in the Corvette community. They allow you to order any kind of custom spring rates and valving. So what I ended up doing is I know I'm going to be putting some decent aero in this car. And I know you guys haven't seen this in a while, but I actually did pick up an APR front splitter, and it was actually extended a little bit by the previous owner. So there's quite a bit of downforce in the front already. I'm gonna be getting a 9 Lifes Racing chassis mount wing. It's actually gonna mount to the bumper beam that goes behind this bumper panel here. And it's gonna be super sturdy. It's almost gonna be, you know, higher than roofline almost, and create a substantial amount of downforce. So I ended up going with custom spring rates based on what other track vets are using for you know, a super heavy spring to be able to compensate for that aero. I don't know if you guys have seen some interior updates, but I'm gonna get an MGW shifter that should be coming this week. I'll probably do that, stick that install video in this one as well. And I ended up going with a Sparco wheel. That stock wheel is just terrible and giant, so much better. I got a Momo quick release on it, so that's kind of cool. It brings it up to a nice position here, driving position. It's not too close or too far away for me. So let's get on with the install here. These do have the leaf springs that go across from wheel to wheel going this way. Normally leaf springs kind of go this way. These Corvettes are kind of weird, so I'm going to be jacking up the rear probably and taking out the leaf spring first, shocks, and then throwing the coilovers on. Yeah, chuck your wheels, guys. All right, so here's that leaf spring I was talking about on these Corvettes. Kind of strange how they do this. I don't know if you guys could see this, but this is the leaf spring that goes all the way across to the other side. And then there's these adjustment bolts right here to raise and lower the car. It puts more tension on the actual leaf spring, and then you can, you know, obviously raise or lower it. They have lowering bolts, which you can slam the car by going even lower than what the stock bolts allow. A lot of people do that mod, but we're actually getting rid of this leaf spring altogether, which is kind of nice. Because there is quite a bit of crosstalk which happens. Because if you think about it, this almost acts as like another sway bar, in the fact that you can actually get crosstalk. And what I mean by that is if this side is, you know, loaded up and you get a bump mid-corner, it's going to transfer all that energy to the other side because it's directly connected. In the coilover setup that I'm going to, you'll have a truly independent suspension setup. So that should be much better than what I'm dealing with now. So. This bolt is thick AF. So I changed my mind and I'm deciding to take the shock off first instead of the leaf spring. I think it'll relieve the tension here, and then I could put a jack underneath if I need to and prop it up and manipulate it a little bit better. I'll probably end up disconnecting the sway bar too, just to free things up and move it better. But if anyone has any suggestions, please leave a comment. I do have Delrin bushings in here, and I cannot for the life of me figure out how to get these things not to squeak. I mean, it's pretty bad. You can hear it. So while I'm driving. It's just super annoying. I think people use like some sort of graphite spray, or I tried to use like silicone spray, a few different things. I may have to end up drilling in some grease fittings to be able to inject grease into the middle of these things, but I really don't want to have to do that. So if you guys have any suggestions, again, these are Delrin bushings, not poly, so let me know. Guess I'm just gonna compress this thing and get it the hell out of here. Maybe not. Wow. Probably should have jacked this side up and put some zip ties around it and compress it and lift it out of here, but I wasn't being very smart about that, I guess. So I decided the old sway bar end link had to come off here. I'm just gonna jack this up a little bit to get this out. But man, I cannot get this shock out of here. It's almost seems like it's seized up, or I'm not strong enough to compress the thing and pull it out. But I think on the other side, I'm gonna definitely compress this with the jack and zip tie it all together. That way it's compressed, and then just try to pull it out of there, because man, this side is a real pain. Come on out of there. Get. Oh, come on. Well, I guess it's just gonna stay like that. Okay, so now we get to take out the leaf spring. There is the leaf spring. This is a composite. It's not like metal or anything. It's some sort of like fiberglass type deal. And man, it's pretty stiff. Like I can't even, I'm jumping on it and it's barely even bending, so. All right, attempt number 2. Okay, attempt number 1,000,000. So, a little update here. I had to take out the bolts for the upper control arm to get this shock to pass by and kind of maneuver this upper to get it out of here. That was fun. So, the other side should be a little bit easier. These Coney shocks were actually in pretty good shape. Usually to test out shocks, you sort of compress them and then see how fast they, expand back to normal. If they get stuck down, you obviously have a bad shock, or, if it kind of gets seized or stuck in any way, you kind of know they're shit, but these were decent, so curious how the new shocks on the coilovers are going to compare to these. After about 5 billion hours, I got the stock suspension out. Well, slightly upgraded OEM plus suspension. Man, these double wishbone things are kind of a pain to work on, because your shock is just sort of like intertwined with everything. So you got to drop the whole assembly or get stuff out of the way, upper control arm wise. It's going to be the same thing for the front, so that's going to be fun. Okay, so the new coilovers are here. I forgot I have to run these little extensions for the damper adjustment in the rear, because you can't get to the normal damper adjustments like a standard coilover. That little perch is kind of tucked up in there. So what I'm gonna have to do is drill a hole through the trunk, a very small one, and I actually got some grommets that are just barely bigger than the diameter of this. And it's gonna have, you know, probably a weather tight seal between where I cut that hole and where this thing has to pass through with my grommet. I ended up pulling the trunk carpet up a little bit to expose the area that I need to drill. It's actually gonna be that little kind of rectangle box right there. And I think probably in this area right here, I just need to drill a hole. And as you can see on this side, it's kind of dark, but right where the coilover passes in, it kind of sits up in there and you can't get to the adjustment knob. So this is gonna have to, you know, whenever I need to make an adjustment, just do it from the truck. I got the rears mostly in. I'm waiting to hear back from the manufacturer actually, because I don't know which direction this top plate's supposed to go. It does have an offset, so one side is longer than the other. So if I flip it the other way, I can't actually get to this bolt that's on the inside there because it's just too close together. So pretty sure this is the way it's supposed to go. Just keeping everything sort of loose until I hear back from them. And then I'm actually moving on to the front now. The front was a lot easier for some reason. I disconnected the top control arm like I did in the back to make things easier. I had to move the washer fluid tank because I had to get to the bolt for the top of the shock. But there's the old crusty boy, the Coney, and the new coilovers going in. There's a Heim joint here, and then there's a Heim joint in the bottom too, which is kind of nice. There's a Heim joint on the old one, and it's kind of worn out, so I'm glad I'm replacing the fronts. So in order to maneuver the front leaf spring out, I had to take the ball joint out and lower this bottom control arm completely at a 90-degree angle so that I could then slip the sway bar or the leaf spring in between, slide it out this way. What a pain. I did just have a chat with the manufacturer of these coilovers, and he did confirm that for street use, for the rear perches, you want the longer end going towards the front of the car. So if you're installing these silver NeoMax coilovers, just take note of that. And then for the front, I was sort of confused as to how you actually adjust the dampers. And he told me it's this little UFO looking thing. This is your adjustment right here. So I got everything torqued down. I'll show you what I did with the trunk adjusters here. So this is under the carpet. We got a little rubber grommet here. I don't know if you guys can see that. But that should make a nice seal there, because this does go through from the outside of the car to the inside. So I did want to seal that off. I drill a little hole, and now these should go on top and poke through like that other side over there. So next thing I'm gonna do is probably lower the car back on the ground to see where we're at ride height wise. I didn't really touch anything from where they had it. Just gonna kind of see where we're at. I did take some measurements before I put the suspension on to make sure everything goes back to the same height that I had it, and I can get away with a little bit of time not aligning the car right away and feeling things out, see if I do need to make adjustments. Okay, so now we're gonna go for a little drive. Now keep in mind, I've never driven a Corvette on coilovers, so it should be interesting. I do have the dampers at the softest setting just to break them in and see what it feels like versus these super stiff conies. And then I'll probably crank it up, go for another lap, but I wanna see what the ride height is like after a quick lap around the block. So let's get that done. Oh wow, it feels pretty smooth already, just over my gravel here. it feels super smooth. Holy crap, what a difference. That's a pretty dramatic difference from what I had and what it's like now. Wow. Very interesting. Curious to see what it feels like when I crank them up, but it feels really smooth right now. Keep in mind this is a 2-day process, so it was quite a lot of effort, but I think it was worth it in the end. I like the adjustability of coilovers and being able to stiffen them up when I go out in the canyons and turn them down when I'm driving on the street, which is a huge plus. And then I can fine tune the ride height a lot better. Those leaf springs are very unpredictable when you're trying to set the ride height, so feels like my brakes came back. That's good. Yeah, really good. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I know it's quite the long process, but I figured I'd show you guys how to do coilovers on the Corvette if you've never seen it before, or see what the suspension is like on these things. It's definitely different from normal cars, but yeah, I'll have to do a canyon run once I get this suspension dialed in, but it's a huge improvement, that's for sure.